So in the last few episodes, we set our sight on a few key challenges that everybody needs to complete in GregTech. The first of these challenges was our oil distillation for fuel processing, to finally solve the issues with power production. Today is all about upgrading our power potential, with batteries and fuel, finishing off the EV quest page, and spamming out some black boxes. All of this in the quest for higher voltages. Welcome back to Star Technology. So the battery that we have access to at the moment is just the regular Lapotron crystal, which holds 10 minutes of EV power. This requires some high voltage circuits and a Lapotron. A Lapotron requires Lapotron dust in an autoclave. Lapotron dust is lapis dust and energium dust. Energium dust is just ruby and redstone. So we actually have all the ingredients to make the first tier of Lapotron crystals. And we're just going to store 16 batteries in an extreme voltage battery buffer. So let's request the buffer, and easy craft. And now here's a quick explainer to show you how battery buffers work. Battery buffers are pretty simple. You have batteries, and they buffer power, truly the stuff of legends, and can only output the amount of amps as you have batteries. So if you have 4 batteries, you are outputting 4 amps. That's why we're going to fill this thing with 16. And we can actually just straight up request 16 Lapotron crystals. It doesn't appear to be that expensive. The most expensive part is the 32 circuits. Let's get that crafting on in the background. And while that's crafting, let's talk about goals for this episode. The obvious one to look at right now is going to be the plat line. And now this is the exact same as the previous GregTech version, so I will explain that later, or you can go back to my other video to see how it works. But effectively, we end up with our sheldonite going into platinum group sludge, and then we end up with iridium, osmium, rhodium, ruthenium, platinum, and palladium. Each of those has a use in the late game. For instance, our next coil material is RTM, which requires ruthenium. But a less obvious goal is actually our fuel setup. Combustion generators can burn 15 different fuels, and the best one of those is high-octane gasoline. I don't think that that's actually worth creating right now. We're not consuming enough fuel, but if we take a look at our diesel right now is actually not that dense in fuel. It only has 480 EU per millibucket. Now we could go for cetane boosted diesel, which has 1440 per 2 millibuckets. So that's 770 EU per millibucket of diesel. And boosting the diesel isn't that hard. We just did tetranitromethane, which is either methyl acetate nitric acid or ethanone and nitric acid. And ethanone is just acetic acid and sulfuric acid. And you can see that the boosting recipe is actually quite cheap, with only 20 millibuckets of the tetranitromethane being used to make 1 bucket of cetane boosted diesel. But I'm thinking we could actually go a bit further and make gasoline. And gasoline is a bit more of an involved process, but as you can see, it is over double the fuel density of cetane boosted diesel. Gasoline is made pretty easily with a bucket of toluene and raw gasoline. And the raw gasoline is 16 buckets of naphtha, refinery gas, methanol, and acetone. And that makes you 20 buckets. Really, it makes you 22 buckets. The only difficulty that we're going to experience in this is getting the methanol and the acetone. Still with me? I'm almost done explaining, I promise. Methanol and acetone all come from distillation of organic products. More specifically, from wood vinegar distillation. We get methanol, acetone, and acetic acid. And acetic acid can be turned into acetone at a 3-to-2 conversion in a large chemical reactor. With quicklime dust as a catalyst, acetic acid, we can get 2 buckets of acetone and 1 bucket of oxygen. So our rate limiting step here on our gasoline production is most likely to be our acetone production. Since we need a bucket of acetone, and obviously the upgrade to gasoline is high octane gasoline, but we'll get to that when we get to that. I'm not going to bother with these steps yet. Oh, and one other thing, we need toluene, and toluene is relatively difficult to come by, but we can just distill it from wood tar. And wood tar distillation gets us 75 millibuckets of toluene. There is no better way of getting it. I guess other than the endgame chemical builder, that's definitely a better way of making toluene. But now, since we have to do 2 organic distillation towers for wood vinegar and wood tar, we may as well do the charcoal byproduct distillation and get wood gas as well. Wood gas isn't particularly useful, but carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide are byproducts that we can use elsewhere. So there's our goal, to make gasoline. And to break that down, we actually need to get an organic byproduct distillation tower set up, which is going to need either a tree greenhouse or mystical agriculture. Since mystical agriculture is a beast of a mod in this pack, let's avoid that for another episode and focus on organic distillation via the tree greenhouse. Most versions of GregTech Community Pack will include one of these blocks. Not this one in particular, but in Community Pack, they have the greenhouse controller, which is slightly different. And in this pack, they have the tree greenhouse controller and the large farm multi-blocks, which as you can see, I've moved into the real base. And so while we're waiting on our Lapatron crystals, let's work on the tree greenhouse controller. So the controller is actually very simple and is meant to be made in MV. So let's make the iron axe and then let's just request the rest of the ingredients. Very easy, very simple. And as we can see, that was in the MV quest page. Well, we have all the parts, and since the tree greenhouse controller is such a beautiful little multi-block, I think let's put it front and center in our base. So I've carved out an area here in the middle of our production hallways. I've decorated it nicely with some trees. Let's build the controller. Okay, so we have our 16 crystals and we have our battery. So we just plug it in like this, nice and easy, and then we put the Lapatron crystals in. I think. Maybe it's... Nope, there we go. Yep, it's charging up. So now we have 10 minutes of continuous power. And by that, I mean we have 10 minutes of 16 amps of EV power to store up. Which with 2 functional gas turbines is 12 amps, so it will take... what's that, 12.5 minutes to fill up, and then they'll only output power when the battery buffer starts to dip. I could put a gate on them like I did in the last series. So this advanced energy detector, I could be using that just to turn them off, but because there's no power voiding, there's no need to actually turn the gas turbines off. It's just useful to be able to supply 16 amps of power during surges. These will just be running constantly though. So that's why we have this here. Mostly just to handle power surges, which our power line can handle. It has 32 max amps. And we've got our tree greenhouse working now. It's actually so fast that you didn't get to see any of the crafting because I'm not quick enough. But if we go into our output bus, we'll see how quickly it fills up. That is because we are running it at EV, so we do just have it hooked up to the main line. Well, it said 9 ticks on the controller, so I'm not sure how this works, but supposedly we're doing a recipe every 3.75 seconds, so it's a good amount of wood. And now you're probably wondering, why do we actually need all of this wood? Well, this of course... this being our 2 new pyrolyzed ovens. These pyrolyzed ovens will take our newly acquired spruce logs, absolutely melt them down over the course of 8 seconds, and turn it into charcoal and charcoal byproducts. For the meantime, I'm just going to void the charcoal. I don't have much use for it outside of charcoal dust, but I'm sure we'll use it for something. The meaty part of this is going to be our charcoal byproducts, which we will throw through a distillation tower to get our wood tar, wood vinegar, wood gas, and dimethylbenzene. Dimethylbenzene, voided. There's no electrolyzer recipe for it at the moment, so it'll just back up and void. But then we will distill wood tar, wood vinegar, and wood gas. Wood tar is our source of toluene. Wood vinegar is our source of methanol and acetone. And wood gas is a source of 5 different gases which we aren't using at the moment. But otherwise, from logs into almost 20 different fluids, I think that's pretty epic. And as we go through and continue to fill out this block, our old kinetic sieve power system will be disassembled. It's been serving us quite well, but now there is nothing that relies on diamonds for power, so we don't need it. And we don't even need it for the sieve products because we already have a new sieving setup right here. So let's turn these bad babies on and start the processing. Oh, I guess they're working at EV. Whoops. I'll have to fix... Well, that doesn't look right. Here's the issue. I've got the energy hatches shared between the 2 blocks. They don't need to be shared. They need to be here and here. There we are. Both are working and at high voltage, which is 10 seconds, because the processing speed of 75% for our copper nickel coils. So we could upgrade the coils to make the speed faster, of course, make it more energy efficient, but for now, that doesn't really matter. And there we go, charcoal byproducts being accumulated. So let's build its distillation tower. And now the next step of the process is ready. Our distillation tower to get 4 different products. Let's turn it on by dragging in charcoal byproducts. There we go. I adore the pretty colors of this mod. And so theoretically, we have the chance of receiving a charcoal dust. And there we are, 1 charcoal dust. So we'll just lock it. We'll make sure all of them are set to fluid locked and void overflow. We don't want this stopping. This is going to be for our power. So having this stop would be a disaster. So next up on the list of things to do is to remove our kinetic sieve. So once we have disassembled our kinetic sieve setup, we can assemble the 3 new distillation towers for wood tar, wood gas, and wood vinegar. And then behind here will be the 2 chemical reactors, which will make us gasoline. Remembering that one of them is required to mix raw with toluene to get our processed gasoline, and the other is required to combine naphtha, refinery gas, methanol, and acetone to get the raw gasoline. So those will stack up here and we'll have a nice symmetrical setup. Isn't that just pretty? Truly a sad day for Create players. And here we are, our distillation towers have been set up. And looking at this, really, this wasn't that hard to do, and I definitely recommend doing this as soon as you possibly can. Look at all these useful products. Creosote we can use for lubricant, phenol, I'm sure we'll need that later. I think it's used for PBI. Benzene, power source, and styrene. Toluene is exactly what we need. Dimethylbenzene you can use for phthalic acid. Methyl acetate is useful for tetranitromethane. Acetone is what we're using for gasoline. Methanol is also gasoline. Ethanol, also useful in plastics and other things, I'm sure of it. Water, yummy hydration juice. Acetic acid we can turn into acetone. Carbon dioxide I'm sure we'll use somewhere. This is ethylene being consumed to make polyvinyl chloride. Methane, useful for PTFE, I believe. Carbon monoxide, I think carbon monoxide is used for polyvinyl butyrol, which is the IV glass. And then hydrogen. It's hydrogen. Everyone loves hydrogen, right? And even in the time it took to build that setup there, look how much we've already buffered. This is an insane amount of fluid already, and we're just chewing through to make all pretty colors. And now that we have this set up, let's make our chemical reactors and switch to gasoline. And since the last episode when we set up PTFE, we actually have over 277 buckets. So we should just be able to request a few pipe casings. If we had the recipes set, of course. Well, let's request the machine casings then rather than just the pipes to start with. 2 large chemical reactor controllers. And that's all the materials required to make 2 large chemical reactors. So let's get building again. Alright, so chemical reactors are now done. We have our buffer tank for gasoline being processed. Sulfuric gas is now being desulfurized. All it's going to take is these pieces of tape and the chemical reactor should start working. I think there's a circuit that I'm missing. Circuit 24. There we go. Let's just check that that's... Yep. Into the input hatch of the next machine, we have raw gasoline. So now we have the toluene in there as well. Let's make gasoline. Beautiful, there we go. So in doing the math on how much gasoline we can produce, naphtha is going to be our biggest bottleneck. In working out all the ingredients, naphtha is the largest, and each time we do a craft of naphtha from our oil distillation, we get 20 millibuckets, and that is every 0.25 seconds, which means that we will need 200 seconds to fill up the amount of naphtha required. Eventually, we can run the distillation tower at IV, and we can make 20 millibuckets every 0.125 seconds, which will fill up the buffer in 100 seconds. But at the moment, we are going to be running it at EV, which means that it will take 200 seconds per craft of gasoline, which at 22 buckets per craft means that, roughly speaking, we are getting 100 gasoline per second, which at the moment is the best we're going to get. And the reason why I know that naphtha is going to be the longest is because looking at refinery gas, it takes 8 seconds to fill the buffer. Methanol is going to take 16 seconds to fill the buffer. Acetone is 50 seconds, and toluene is 106 seconds. And there's not really a way of creating naphtha faster than just distilling oil. So unfortunately, we're capped at that speed. Fortunately, we can upgrade the fuel later down the line into high octane gasoline, which literally doubles the fuel density. We do need 4 different other chemicals. We already make toluene, so we could do that. Then ethyl tert butyl ether, or ether, is just butene and ethanol. We also need octane, which comes from hydrocracking light fuel, and nitrous oxide, which, shocker, is nitrogen and oxygen. This then also increases the yield to 32 buckets from the 20 buckets of gasoline. So we are going to do this eventually, but just not now. We've got gasoline production now. Let's just sit down for a while and relax. So we now have our gasoline production going, and we also have an expanded wall of our combustion engines. Not only do we have our initial 2, I've upgraded our capacity for 4 more. So this now produces 24 amps of extreme voltage power, which is a substantial amount. And it's been a little bit, and we've actually been building up gasoline as well. So we're now at 184 buckets, which means our power is stabilized. And 24 amps of EV power is actually a lot of power, all things considered. So I think the next step is to upgrade a few machines around the base just to allow for some extra power consumption, and to finally start working on the plat line. We have a lot of materials here that we need to get before we can move on to IV, so let's work on that. And with our large chemical reactors now, this is going to look really nice and be very, very easy. Small little correction there. Each of these combustion engines does 3 amps, so we're actually only generating 18, but that's still a lot. So let's do a big crafting request so that we can actually have a look at how much stuff we need. So thinking about it, we probably want a few more high voltage energy hatches, so let's get crafting those. And we're missing LPICs and black steel. So we'll sideline the high voltage energy hatches for now. Let's ask for 16 chemical reactors. We're missing the polyethylene sheets, so I guess 10 it is. And now we're missing PTFE sheets. These buffering issues are kind of annoying. So let's make 2 copper upgrades and go upgrade the buffer size first. Polyethylene and polytetrafluoroethylene. And so now let's go back and request 16 chemical reactors. Now we're still missing PTFE. Whatever, we'll do 10. That's 1,000. I'm not good at this, am I? All right, 10. There we go. We have now requested 10 controllers. And we can see our requester has actually started. So this little ME requester here might not be very TPS friendly or lag friendly, as you can see by my frame rate these days, but it does allow us to request ingots when they are going down. So rather than just on-demand crafting them, we can just have a small buffer. Yes, there are absolutely better ways to do this, but I don't really care. I'm not really for optimal play these days, more just fun. So if we're requesting 10 chemical reactors, we need 10 pipe casings. Another buffering issue again, so maybe we put those on standby as well. Everything's on standby these days. Well, at least I know the chemically inert PTFE machine casings don't take any PTFE. Well, they do, obviously, but not the PTFE sheets. So we can do that, 200. I think we'll also need 10 maintenance hatches then. We have the copper nickel coils in our bag. Oh, we actually already had 5 maintenance hatches. Oh well. We'll make 20 output hatches, which we can also turn into input hatches. And now our crafting is stored up, so now we just wait. And while we're here, let's replenish our LPIC wafers by laser engraving some wafers with the orange lens, and then just cutting them down. So we can take our LPICs off the chart. And let's just request another 100 black steel dust. We have no CPUs. What am I talking about? All right, and let's request 100 black steel dust. Because we'll just smelt this up as well in the blast furnaces. 6 seconds, not bad. Output hatches are done. Maintenance hatches are also done. Grab some duct tape. So the buffers are filled. Let's get our 10 PTFE pipe casings. Lovely. And we should have enough black steel now for 10 energy hatches, if we can find them. There they are. 10 hatches. It only takes 20 steel, so not too bad. And now with all the materials in our inventory, we can finally begin our chemical torture. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's fun. Playing in GregTech requires a few basic materials that will come up time and time and time again. And especially for where we're going now, we want these automated. So the first one is nitric acid. Second is sulfuric acid, and the third is hydrochloric acid. So our acid productions. This will be on the test later. So for our goal of conquering the plat line by the end of this episode, we are going to need nitric acid to make aqua regia. But aqua regia also takes hydrochloric acid, so we do want to automate that. Nitric acid is also going to be used to make our platinum group sludge. And sulfuric acid is used in a fair amount of things, including our TNT production, which we will have to get to soon enough, our plastic circuit boards, and things like indium concentrate and nitration mixture, which we will be getting to eventually. So for now, let me show you how to automate these processes without completely destroying your buffers. Actually, come to think of it, I think I'm still playing like my previous series. In the last series, I had to go out and find ores, gather materials, and I didn't actually have passive anything really. This time, with the use of our sieves, potato farms, and tree farm, we actually have access to everything we need in unlimited quantities, as seen by our 4 million chlorine gas, which is still going up, our hydrogen gas, which is almost maxed out, nitrogen, which is almost maxed out, and oxygen, which continues to stay very high in our production chains. And see, these level emitters were going to be used to turn off the production of the materials when we had too much. And I think for things like hydrochloric acid, which are a byproduct of some chemical reactions, maybe that is worth it. But I'm not sure. Sometimes when you play this game, you just have to kind of get a feel for it and wait for something to break. And so for starters, I think let's just wait for it to break. So I've picked a spot in our base for our new chemical reactors. We will do our sulfuric acid and hydrochloric acid here, and our nitric acid here. Because nitric acid is actually a 2-step process if you don't have nitrogen dioxide on passive, which we don't yet. But as soon as we get end to air distillation, we will have way too much nitrogen dioxide, which will be able to then decommission that chemical reactor. But let's get building. And so now that both reactors are built, let's plug them in and get it going. Okay, plugged in. Sulfuric acid. It's still disabled because we have a lot of it. Hydrochloric acid. There we go. That is very fast. Oh my gosh. Nitrogen dioxide. Yep, that's very fast. It should just be filling up here. Beautiful. And nitric acid. There we go. And now we see our nitric acid is actually flowing into a super tank. Our hydrochloric acid is going up as well. I guess the question is, do we need 4,000 buckets of hydrochloric acid?
Yes.
And this new area is why we need all of those fluids in such high quantities. This is the platinum line. Rather than showing me building it, and trust me, it took a long time to build, I think I will just show you me turning it on and explain it as we go through. So the first step here is going to be mixing hydrochloric acid and nitric acid to make aqua regia. And everything's plugged in, so I should be able to adjust. That was fast. We'll lock it, and we'll make sure that that is a storage bus set to extract only with aqua regia. And with our aqua regia backed up, it's time to make the PGS dust, which is nitric acid and purified sheldonite. There are other ways to make it with tetrahedrite, chalcopyrite, pentlandite, chalcolite, and bornite, but sheldonite is the one that gives us the most PGS dust per ore. So we may as well just use that. So let's go. That's nice and quick. And the next step is going to be a centrifuge where we mix aqua regia and PGS to make platinum powder, palladium powder, inert metal mixture, and rarest metal mixture, as well as some sludge residue. So let's turn the machine on. It's a bit slow, but it's working now, so that's great. Now we'll just go down the list of products. So raw platinum powder requires an electrolysis recipe. So it should have been inserted into here. We can just turn this on, and it should make us platinum dust. Also, we will be handling our sulfuric nickel solution this way as well. So I believe this electrolyzer is going to be the backlog here. So now we have our platinum dust. We're going to get nickel dust as a byproduct here, also reclaiming some sulfuric acid and chlorine already, as well as oxygen. Lots of goodies. The next one is palladium powder, which you mix with hydrochloric acid to get palladium and ammonia chloride. And ammonium chloride we can just electrolyze. So let's just turn that on. Oh, that's the wrong hydrochloric acid. We want this hydrochloric acid. And as you go along through these, you always find little mistakes that you make. Originally, what I had underneath here was a interface into storage bus so that the platinum subnetwork could pull from the main network, but it actually wasn't doing it. I'm not quite sure why. I'm not an expert at this, but this is a safer way of doing it. Inputting into a small buffer, which here are 64 of each, so one stack of items and one stack of fluids, and then having storage buses on the other side of it, which can pull into the network. This just stops us from over-pulling things like hydrochloric acid, nitric acid, things that we don't really want to pull out of the main net. And what we want to do as well is we want to set our drives to lowest priority so that the sulfuric acid that is stored in here is going to be the first to be used. And as you can see by how quickly the PGS is accumulating, we are going to be sifting through a very long backlog. But getting back on track, our palladium chemical reactor isn't working because this needs to be an output bus, not an output hatch. So let's replace that and see it work. 3 seconds. There we go. And then in this input bus, we should see ammonium chloride. Perfect. But this electrolyzer, as I suspected, is going to be stuck on the sulfuric nickel solution for a while, but that's okay. Passive processes like this in GregTech are all about time. The more time you give it, the more you get. And as we can see, we have now 1,000 buckets of nickel solution, so we've got a long time to wait for the platinum and palladium to get through. Or sorry, the ammonium chloride to get through. But we're getting our palladium and our platinum very slowly. So let's move on to the next step. The next one here is our inert metal mixture. This is rhodium and ruthenium processing to start with. And this is just sulfuric acid and metal mixture in an EV chemical reactor. So we've got this working at EV. And there we go. So we should see, yep, we have now gone up in hydrogen. And then rhodium sulfate is another electrolysis recipe. So this electrolyzer, I probably should have had 2, but this is fine. The electrolyzer is just going to be working constantly. Next up is the ruthenium tetroxide, which is just ruthenium tetroxide and carbon dust, which gets you ruthenium and carbon dioxide. So ruthenium tetroxide and carbon dust, only at high voltage as well, and that'll get us some ruthenium, as well as carbon dioxide. So now we have platinum, palladium, and ruthenium. And now we start to get to the spicy section, rarest metal mixture, which requires an IV chemical reactor with hydrochloric acid to get iridium metal residue and acidic osmium solution. So let's get this working. Wrong hydrochloric acid again. There we go, 20 seconds at IV. And so after processing the rarest metal mixture, we get our acidic osmium solution, which we need to put through a distillation tower to get us more hydrochloric acid, some water, and our osmium tetroxide. And osmium tetroxide we just mix with hydrogen to get osmium and water. And that's here. So let's turn that on. Yep, power cables were disconnected. That's why it wasn't working. And it's already done. And then our final recipe here is the iridium chloride recipe, which there's no iridium chloride in there, and I think I can tell you why. I haven't set up the second centrifuge. So our second centrifuge over here is going to do the iridium chloride processing and the platinum sludge residue, which will get us gold and silicon dioxide. So let's turn that on. And it's going through our platinum sludge residue first, and then it will get to the iridium. And so with all these machines humming away, we're going to see a nice buildup of nickel dust, gold dust, osmium, ruthenium, platinum, palladium, rhodium, and iridium. We just have to wait for our backlog of sheldonite to get processed and then our sulfuric nickel solution. So we're going to have a lot of nickel after this. Not the worst thing in the world. But we also have to deal with other products, and the fluids are the things that I want to be recycling. So things like sulfuric acid, which you can see we are building up now, we're going to send back into mainnet. Oxygen gas, hydrochloric acid, water, chlorine, and when it comes down to it, we will send back ammonia, because ammonia is used in other places in the base. And putting that back into the system is as simple as an export bus back into an interface. So let's put our capacity cards in, our acceleration cards, and send back sulfuric acid, oxygen, hydrochloric acid, water, and chlorine. And because of how quick that should be, we should see, so water has gone through, we're seeing our oxygen go down quite quickly as well. And that is just going to keep these drives very clean so we can see only the products of the platinum processing line. And now let's get the quests for platinum, palladium, ruthenium, iridium, and osmium. There we go. We're still missing the rhodium because we need to electrolyze the rhodium sulfate. Claim the rewards. 14 coins. I still think this is kind of cool. I like the coins. And with all that being produced in the background, I think it's time we wrap up the episode here. We've done a lot today. We've made a new power setup, created a stunning new gasoline production facility, and conquered the plat line, which finally means we've finished the extreme voltage chapter and can move to insane voltage. And if you like this series and want to see more, make sure you drop a like and subscribe. It means a lot and it helps the channel out. See you next time.